Um, so I was born and raised in Monroe, Louisiana, which you can probably see in the artwork. And so very conservative part of the country. And I definitely did art I had wonderful art instructors in high school, went on to college at TCU in Fort Worth. And I really, really wanted to major in studio art, but my parents wouldn't pay for that. So I appeased them by being an art education major and minoring in painting. I've done art my whole life. Do a lot of mostly drawing and painting, a lot of doodling in notebooks, but mostly for product, mostly with the end in mind, because that's how I was taught, and that's what we did in class. And so a lot of what you said, Susan, resonated with me, and I'll talk more about that. But and so, pardon me, I've just got to look at my notes, or I'm going to lose my train of thought. And so that's what I did, and that's what it was for, and I was good at it, but it was always for the end result. And so fast forward to 20s and 30s, I had a career, not in art at all, and I kind of abandoned art for a little bit, and I would do things. People would find out that I knew how to draw and paint, so they would ask me to, make an invitation for them or do a marketing thing for work or whatever. But that was really the extent of it. And then I married my husband, and we lived in Texas for a long time, but moved back to Louisiana and had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I had decided at that time that I needed to help him, bring home the bacon. So I went to nursing school. I was very, very invested in that, and that was very serious. I wasn't doing any art. And then lo and behold, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in the middle of all that. And that just was like a gut punch for my whole family, for me. Not what anyone's expecting when they're 37 years old. And I'm sure somebody in this room has had to deal with that. And so I quit school, and I had to go through treatment and lots of surgeries, and I was sick and couldn't get well, and that went on for probably a good 2 years. And as I was coming out of it, you kind of in the moment dealing with the physical stuff, but as I was coming out of it, I realized that I was needing to deal with my emotional and mental stuff too. And so I picked back up the paintbrush. I kind of gave myself permission to do that, and put out my paints in my dining room, and I would, when the kids were taking a nap or whatever, I would go in and kind of just doodle around. Um, but at that time, and I loved it. But I was also I think I was searching for maybe, I was in therapy trying to deal with my cancer stuff, but I think I was searching for maybe, that meaning in the middle of where can art and therapy, you know, meet for me. And I stumbled upon a class, a local class first, and then I ended up going to Houston to some longer weekends, but something that's called intuitive painting. And I don't know if anyone in here has ever heard of that, but it basically is all about the opposite of whatever I had been doing up until that point, which is painting for product. I suddenly had someone that was telling me that it was okay to just paint for the sake of creating, and paint for paint paint to paint, and just be in the moment. Um, and so once I started doing that, and I was just I I feel so lucky that I had that sort of time where I had cancer, and then I don't think I ever would have stopped and done that had I not had cancer and had to come to a hard stop and change my life. And so at that point, I started painting just to paint. I had my stuff out in my dining room, so my friends would come over and sort of see what I was doing, and I mean, there might be, I mean, literally at that time, there was probably like an airplane flying out of a vagina. Like it just, like I was not, I mean, that's what I was learning is just don't hold back, don't censor, don't get rid of the judgment. And so there was a lot going on in that dining room. So anyway, but I still had my skills that I had developed over the years. And so people started asking me a little bit, well, would you, wait, you're good at this. Can you paint my family? Can you paint my house? And so then I kind of swung back the other direction because it gave me a little purpose. I was able to, for a good 10 years, I did a whole lot of painting families, dogs, cats, houses, and I did it in my own way because I was learning to sort of do this intuitive thing, but then I also, was making a little money doing that. And so I did that for, gosh, I mean, at least 10 years when we lived in Louisiana. But I was getting a little bit burned out on it, and I was wanting to change direction. And I was doing that in acrylics on canvas. And so um, my husband's job brought us here. He had been working up here a lot, and we were, after the whole cancer thing, we were kind of wanting a change. And so when we moved up here, I thought, okay, this is my time when I can start maybe looking and, dabbling in oils again and doing some of that. And so I started playing around with oils, and then I was really looking to kind of deepen that process and not just. I'd learned how to oil paint in high school, and so it'd been a really, really long time. But I wanted to do more, and so I went to a class and learned how to incorporate cold wax into the painting. I don't know if y'all know what cold wax is. Probably some of you do, but it's literally like beeswax and solvent, and it comes in a can, and it's very easy to mix. I mean, I do like a 50-50 mix. And I'll tell you in a minute how kind of my process. But anyway, I started. Um, I was still doing the family paintings, but I started kind of playing around with like some really intense color and using the cold wax. Um, and so, hold on, I'm going to went way off my notes. Um, sorry, I'm so bad at speaking in front of people. Um, and so it has kind of I don't know if any of y'all have ever used it, but it has almost like a cake frosting consistency. And so what I started doing, I initially wanted the cold wax because I thought that I wanted to really build up my surface. But in reality, what I ended up liking um, was to use the cold wax. Let me see a really good example. So what I like to do is put a black gesso down, a dark, dark gesso, and then I'll go over it with this sort of washy 50-50 combination of maybe like white and off-white, and just sort of haphazardly use a tool and go across that gesso so that then can come back with this really opaque color that I like so much, as you can see. Like I want every color in the rainbow every day. And so I want to come back over that, but I like this sort of washy, peeking out, and if that makes any sense. And so I will come back and paint over that, but let those original that mark making and sort of the I guess the shapes and the negative spaces kind of guide me as I play with the surface. I started doing that while at the same time still doing the family paintings, and it was it's been a really nice, what you were talking about earlier, like resonated with me, where you are able to. I literally in my studio have an acrylic side and an oil side, and I go back and forth, and I think really that informs both types of work. Um, this is the most fun, but honestly, I'm even starting to kind of those two are starting to converge. So that's kind of fun. That's kind of a fun new thing. Um, and so for this particular show, so this is the first. This is the biggest show I've ever done. I've done a small solo show in Louisiana, and then I did a small one here a couple of years ago, and at Surface Gallery recently. But so this has sort of evolved. My father unexpectedly passed away about 2 years ago, and so I I try not to censor anything. I try not to control it too much, and so I sort of let those emotions and all the things that I was feeling come into play in the last couple of years of work that I've been doing, and so um, it has this evolved from the last body of work I did had a lot of deer in it because my dad was a deer hunter, and I feel like I've really felt like since he passed away, when deer come into my yard, that I feel his presence, and so as that went on, I started asking my friends, what does any animal or something in nature show up for you as maybe somebody who is deceased, as a spirit, kind of, do you feel their presence? And so I got great answers, and I said, I want to paint that. And so that's sort of where the owl and the hare, and I always have to throw in some skulls because I love skulls. So that's just skulls. But the crane, the raccoon's just funny. But anyway, so yeah, I know. I love and the crane came up a lot. The wolf, even the coyote. So I really would like to do a little bit more of that. And that's sort of so some of this is very intentional with those animals, but then I still keep that sense of play um, with sort of what's around it. I still kind of wander around the surface and get lost in it and try not to censor too much. But yeah, I mean this was about that. This was about moons. My dad loved the moon. He told us a whole lot about the moon. I wish I had listened more. Um, but so whenever I see the moon, it's been full the last couple of days. But I really like sometimes it's about the way things feel. I love the way it feels to make a crescent moon with my hand and that paintbrush. Sometimes it just comes down to that. Um, so, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say to y'all. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yeah. A favorite color? Okay. So we were just talking about this. I have all the colors out. I love red. And so what we were talking about earlier is when you're learning in school and you're hearing, don't use color straight out of the tube. Don't outline everything in black. It feels like a total rebellion to use the red straight out of the tube. So I'm at the store going, this is the best red, and I'm going to use it straight out of the tube. So I would say the red orange. I love the red orange, but I go through phases with colors because I'll overuse it and then I'll have to move on. Yeah, somebody will say, what's your favorite color? I'm like, red, green, lime green. I don't know.
What about the Mexican masks?
I think that's from Texas. I've always, well, you know what? I'll tell you when that started. Um, when I was a kid, the first time I went out of the country, my parents took us to Belize during Christmas. And we were in a Burgers Key, and they were kind of scuba divers. And so that was why we went there. And I had never been I mean, I'd been to New Orleans, obviously. I lived in New Orleans part of the time, but when I was growing up, I had been in New Orleans a few times, and they will light up they'll put the candles in the cemeteries and so I had never really, really like been to a cemetery where every single headstone was lit up with candles during the holidays, and so that really resonated with me. And then I lived in Texas a long time, and I love the way they that the Hispanic culture deals with death as and celebrates death and all that. So I always have to throw that in. But I know this whole show is about death, but I know it doesn't really look like it's about death. So yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, two things. I'm noticing the arch in so many of these works, and I wonder if you could speak.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's another thing. I and I know a lot of artists do this. I will just get on something simple. It might be an arch, it might be the crescent moon, and I'll just want to repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And I started realizing, I started thinking, looking into maybe what does this even mean? And I was looking up the symbolism of the arch, and it really has a lot to do with maybe entering a different realm. Um, and it may look like that in some of these paintings, and it may not. And so it's kind of two things for me. It's kind of like just I love that. It gives me a little bit of I don't know, like structure. Thank you, thank you. A little bit of structure to maybe put something inside and out of. But it also, I understand that it really kind of represents maybe moving into a different realm, whether it's spirit realm, heaven, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, so I kept using it because it just felt right. So I'll exhaust it and then I'll move on and find something else. Because that, like when I'm really painting intuitively, where I don't care if, like I'm doing it on a piece of paper and I don't care if anyone ever sees it. I will work it to it'll be like you don't even. And so I have to really try. Some of this is me holding back because I have learned, like one of the things with intuitive painting was I did it for so long, and then I realized I wanted to start showing my work. So I I I actually talked to the instructor that I went to for a long time. And I said, how do you marry the two? And she said, you will figure it out. She's exactly right. So I sort of have learned over the years to dive in and then to step back. And so I don't even know how to explain it. I just kind of know, right? I don't know. But I could work a painting to death. Like it, death. So yes, I say it bleeds out into everything. I had this conversation with my boss the other day. I work at Westside Cares, so what I do at work every day is very, very different from this. And this is my sanity. This is the only reason I can work there. But we were talking about how when you paint that way, it things become easy. Like it should be easy. I should be enjoying all this and not being mad at it. And you know, and so what did you ask me again?
Well,
Sorry, I'm telling you all my brain knows. Yes, yes, yes. And so in life, I feel like when you learn how to get rid of those roadblocks, that you learn how to live. Like this all bleeds out into life. This is like, why am I making this so difficult? Because you're really kind of getting out of the way of your own self, right? And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm getting out of my own way, and I'm not trying to get rid of that judgment in my head and that self-critic and all of that. Yeah. Well, thank you, because I am terrified. Terrified. Thank you. So yeah, it bleeds into your life. Definitely bleeds into your life, and it really was life changing for me. And I'm actually there. The person I used to go to in Houston, which was an easy drive from Louisiana, she has a week long thing in Taos, and so that's like my goal for the next couple of years. that I want to, because every once in a while you need a reminder. It's a practice, you know? And so I think every once in a while I just want to dive back into it. I did a few, having kids. I have two children that are now out of my house, which is very, very freeing. So so now I'm like, what can I do? So yeah, I'm going to go to this week long thing and just remind myself of the things that I know. But so Michelle Casu is sort of the like she's in her, I think she's in her 80s, and she's kind of a guru. She's from France, and she like pipes in on the computer. But the woman, I just kind of lucked out. The woman that I went to in Houston, her name is Sherry Ray, and she's kind of a protege. Well, she was a protege at the time. Now she facilitates these workshops in Taos, and usually, I think they have like morning meetings with Michelle. And so it's just, if you want to talk to me about that on the side, I'll talk about it all day long. But it's really really neat, and it's close by, and I think you can go, and I think it's an 8-day workshop, and it's got gourmet food, and it's at a wonderful little lodge, and yeah, is what I'm saying. I guess what I'm trying to say. Um, it may not look on first glance like that's what I was dealing with, but I just kind of took what came to me naturally, like I said, with ease, and just that's maybe in the past I would have thought, well, gosh, that's silly to paint deer sheds, but that's like a thing for me. So paint the deer sheds. And actually, I enjoy painting deer sheds. I like the way the brush feels, and sometimes like I said, it just comes down to that. It feels good, and that's when it's the most authentic. And that's really at the end of the day, if it's authentic, then you're sharing yourself, and that's the real deal. So yeah. Anybody else? Thank you. Thanks, y'all.